Hello and welcome back to another episode of DeFi Decoded. I am Alex Tapscott here with Andrew Young. Andrew, I'm going to skip most of my typical preamble because I'm just very excited to introduce our guest, Tim Draper, a legend of the venture capital industry, someone who has been at the formation or at the starting point of many industries and some of the largest companies in the world today. Tim founded Draper Associates, DFJ, Draper University, which is a global human accelerator, and the globally popular entrepreneur pitch show, Meet the Drapers. He funded Baidu, Tesla, Skype, SpaceX, Twitch, Hotmail, Focus Media, Robinhood, Oklo, Coinbase, Cruise, and many, many other unicorns. I think over 50 funded from the seed stage, pardon me. So I'm not sure who else has that kind of track record. Tim's also a great friend of the pod and of the firm, having joined us before in the past. Tim, we're just delighted to have you on the show. Welcome to DeFi Decoded.
Great. Thanks for having me, Alex and Andrew. Great to be here. And I'm a big fan. So keep up the good work.
Well, the feeling is more than mutual, Tim. So this is a crypto podcast, but you've had success over many decades identifying trends and emerging champions before they become major corporations or major players in their industry. And I think we're in this interesting moment right now where there's not one new technology, but several new technologies, all emerging at the same time, or at least really hitting their stride, right? There's blockchains, which are, the first digital medium for value, AI, which is allowing us to completely reimagine what computers can do, and they're reshaping the economy and the energy grid and all sorts of other stuff. There's healthcare and biotech, which promises to kind of unlock the promise of longevity and to cure diseases. And then this whole renewed interest in defense and aerospace and space as the world kind of confronts a sort of a new century, a new reality. So, lots to go through. I'm not even sure where exactly to begin. But in the pre-show, you were talking about when is it a good time to buy Bitcoin? So why don't we start there, and we'll go into these other topics.
Well, first, it's a great time to be a venture capitalist because all those new technologies are challenging all of the status quo. So any industry where the government or the business is a monopoly in providing bad service at a high cost, that's an industry we like to look at as one that can be transformed by new technology. And so it's a great opportunity for startups, for entrepreneurs to come out and use those new technologies, use AI, use CRISPR for transforming the drug industry, or cloning, or stem cells, or whatever, to transform the drug industry, and use Bitcoin to transform the banking industry, transform government. So many incredible things are happening out there. And then space and transportation, of course, have been blown apart by Elon's success in Tesla and SpaceX. And it's allowed incredible creativity so people can move faster, farther, and explore more. And this is going to be, I think we're going through another one of those incredible metamorphosis of humanity. I think, all those things put together, you see a future that's very bright. When there's a big industry and it is providing bad service at a high cost, it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs. They can come in and use the newest technologies and take advantage of those industries that are providing bad service at a high cost. So you can think of what those might be. Big pharma is providing bad service at a high cost. In fact, it's proven because we're spending more and more of our GDP on healthcare, and we're living shorter lives in America. And that basically is proof that we're not getting the service we should be. And that's why it's great that there are all these new technologies. There's CRISPR and stem cells and cloning and uh, messenger DNA, or messenger RNA, DNA changes where you can transform your DNA and re-inject it, and all of a sudden you're a younger, better you. Amazing things are happening, and we're going to go as a society from chemotherapy, which is like we give you this drug for this, and then you need another drug because you have side effects, and you need another drug. And it keeps the pharma companies in business. We're going to move to biocures, where here is a cure. It's biological, and it's a cure for whatever it is you have. It gives you something, that part of your body that generates more T cells or whatever it is. And so I think we're going through a major transformation there. I think we're seeing a major transformation in commerce, in currency, in finance, all of those industries, in investing. We're seeing a big transformation because Bitcoin has this blockchain, this perfect record blockchain. You no longer, to collect taxes, you no longer need to have a tax collector because you can put it all on Bitcoin. And eventually all governments everywhere will be operating in Bitcoin blockchain. They won't be using their fiat systems with the banking system and the central bank and all that. That it makes no sense. At this point, it makes no sense because you've got it all built into software in Bitcoin. You have the blockchain, it keeps perfect records. So eventually that all goes away, and governments are able to collect taxes without hiring 85,000 IRS agents to collect your taxes because they will automatically come out.
Yeah. Tim, you mentioned some of these different industries, right? Like, so healthcare is one, financial services is another, and transportation was the third, I think, that we talked about. And each of those different industries, oftentimes there's a service that's being provided by the government poorly. But other times it's an entrenched group of companies or a protected industry that is providing services poorly. So pharma and healthcare companies make it difficult for smaller firms to compete. In financial services, like the bank lobby is very, very powerful and tries to work with government to create laws that just make it difficult for anyone new to come along and compete with them. And in that area in particular, there seems to be a lot going on. Bitcoin is one of these things that it's sort of like the innovator's dilemma, like Clay Christensen wrote. With new technology, sometimes the market opportunity is not only unknown, it's unknowable, and it's usually so small that incumbents ignore it, right? So like Bitcoin came along, and I think a lot of people sort of dismissed it almost initially because it was very volatile, it wasn't worth particularly very much, but it found a community of people for whom it was like a superpower, right? Being able to store value, to build wealth, move money between people when they couldn't access financial services. And then from there, it grew and grew and grew to the point where today, all the big banks and many and governments are now looking to hold the asset or build products and services around the asset, which I think is sort of interesting. And yet we're in this moment where, like, the big companies that are firmly entrenched in financial services still seem to be fighting tooth and nail to allow for, say, sensible rules and regulations around crypto to make it easier for newcomers to compete. So like the reason I'm raising all this is what you're describing is the scenario where it's never been better to be a venture capitalist. There's all these new technologies. Founders have the ability to disrupt the status quo, but the status quo is going to protect its interests. No? How do we overcome that?
Yeah. Well, they do politically try to protect their interests, but at least in a democracy, the consumer of the product, it has a voice, and the consumer of healthcare is saying, "Wait, I'm taking all these chemicals and I'm dying.
Hmm.
Why don't I do this other thing that's more biological, and I'll live and I'll do better, and I won't have to pay for these drugs forever. Um, Similarly, governments by their nature are monopolies, and if they're providing bad service, people used to be stuck, and they had to just deal with it. The king was the king, and that was the way it worked. Now we have 50 states in the U.S., and they all compete with each other for us. And you can see that California, the socialist practices of California were sending people away. Jobs were all going to Texas and Florida, and now California has to shape up. So those special interests that were keeping people down can't do it forever. It is true, though, that what happens in industry is a new industry is created or a new startup becomes big. And then government feels like they have to get involved. And then they get involved, and then it becomes a regulated monopoly. That happened in electricity. It happens in drugs. It's in food. It's in technology now. It's in social media.
And are they trying to do the same thing? Do you think they're trying to do the same thing with AI and these new technologies as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if government gets involved, then those two set up all the rules. They negotiate and they set up all the rules. The rules are set up for big companies, and the little companies don't really have a way to compete unless they come along with new technology, and that new technology will transform the industry by grabbing the customer. And that customer, if the customer grabs it fast enough, then the politics, they can't resist it. They have to do it. And they did that. Of course, the internet, they fought that tooth and nail. Lots of industries got transformed by the internet. Taxis, hotels, whatever, they all lobbied hard, but it was too late. With Bitcoin, they've been lobbying very hard, but now they've kind of accepted Bitcoin as at least a store of value, but long term, it's going to be the source of currency and everything else. So they've accepted that, but I used to go around to my friends and say, God, you ought to buy some of this. It's just kind of interesting. It's speculative. It could work out. It might not. I kind of felt like it would. And
when
so I
was
told
that?
all these people
When was that you first started telling your
from
friends?
2011 on, I've been telling my
I
friends.
just want to know
They've just
how many of them
they've been kicking themselves ever since.
How many of them took you up on it? Anyone?
A few. Well, a few I gave Bitcoins to because they spoke at Draper University. But then, but now I look and I say, wait, Silicon Valley Bank went out of business. I got all these calls from entrepreneurs saying, hey, I can't make payroll on Monday. I had to go and put money. I had to make offers to put money into those companies because we didn't know if the government would bail them out or not. If that's the case, if government and banking are uncertain, which they are, then I'm telling all my companies that you should have a treasury, and that treasury should have part of your money in big banks. And they go, oh, yeah, of course. Part in small banks. And they say, why? Because the U.S. government can bail out a small bank. And part of it in Bitcoin. And they say, why? Because you, as a CEO or a board member, are personally liable for payroll for at least 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, for your entire company. And if your treasury doesn't have another way of getting their money, if Silicon Valley Bank or other bank goes out of business, you are on the hook, and you better have at least 4 weeks of payroll sitting there in Bitcoin. And then I say to families, look, if there's a run on the banks, which there easily could be, I mean, if you should see what happened in Argentina when they had hyperinflation.
Yeah.
People were going crazy. They lost fortunes. They whatever. You should have, if you are responsible for somebody's family, for a family financially, you should have about 6 months worth of expenses in Bitcoin, and you should hold that. And if you're a government, you should have Bitcoin in your treasury, because you need to be liquid in the case that your currency starts, when there's a run on your currency. So all of these things it used to be like an opportunity, and now it's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also really interesting too. Like operating a crypto business right now, most of our bills on a day-to-day basis are actually paid in crypto. It's very rare that we have vendors that send us wire information. You know what I mean? It's really not the standard. And it's actually gone to the point now where many, often like portions, if not even the majority of fundraising rounds are actually done in stablecoins, sometimes Ether, sometimes Bitcoin as well.
I'm a big fan of stablecoins. I think they're a great bridge to Bitcoin, because they are tied to the dollar, and they're actually inflationary. You put more stablecoins out there, you're printing more money.
Yeah, it's secret QE.
Yeah.
That's why we like them. They increase adoption and they increase the price. It's perfect.
And they're inflationary, and so but it does get people moving, and then they start moving. They say, "Oh, okay, I've got this extra stablecoin. I'm going to put that into Bitcoin." And then and then people are saying, I'm getting this quite a bit. I don't accept fiat. And that's more in like business to business. I'm not seeing it in retail yet, but at some point, I know retailers are starting to say, yeah, we accept Bitcoin, but you're not seeing as many say we only accept Bitcoin or we only accept crypto.
Also just kind of curious on your prior point about governments allowing innovation to happen. In a world where we move to like a multipolar world, and then within that context, and then at the same time, decentralized networks that are actually properly designed can't be stopped as well. To me, that combination of decentralized, unstoppable networks plus a multipolar world that can't completely coordinate on everything sort of leads me to think that we're entering an era where innovation will just be completely unlocked and completely unburdened by sort of, I guess, government regulation in some respects. I'm curious what you think, I guess, about that as well.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see, Prospera is setting up a government outside of Honduras that is a complete freedom-oriented government. They still have to have some understanding regulation. They have to work with the Honduran government. So it's not like completely free. There are people talking about, and a group worked on putting a government up in space, which would allow people to do whatever they wanted in cyberspace and space and whatever, or 11 miles offshore where it's the law of the seas. So I think that the maybe to get there where you're talking, we just need to decentralize government, and that could mean the 50 states or maybe a lot more states. That could mean our federal government has a couple of different vehicles that all compete with each other. We used to have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines all compete with each other. Now it's like Department of Defense. And so hopefully that will decouple, decentralize. It is happening now because of the Defense Department realizes that they're, totally antiquated. They look silly. And so they have to use technology to improve. And now you've got the Space Force and they're all kind of going, oh, we need that. We need that. I also think that people might move toward a liquid democracy because our representative democracy doesn't really represent us. I don't know, what is it? About 3% of the people have actually even met their congressperson.
Hey, Tim, I've actually never heard that expression, liquid democracy, before. Can you just describe what does that mean?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, it's kind of cool. The idea is, let's say I feel very strongly about keeping regulations down. And I feel like, okay, Andrew is going to be my representative for that. And then I care a little less, but I do care about women's issues. And I make my daughter, Jessie, my representative for that. And then Andrew and Jessie now have 2 votes. And then Jessie gathers up the rest of the family, and now she's got 30 votes. And then she gathers up her friends, and and then suddenly she is a real major representative of women's issues. And Andrew is doing the same thing over here on deregulating. And he is building up a following of different people. And so that people can have representation, but not one representative that is representing them for everything. That's liquid democracy. Another way of doing this now is that we all have smartphones. We can all vote on every issue that comes up. We can each vote. And so our representatives can actually be like our Congress people can just vote the way we have voted on our phones. And so I think we can get more active that way and feel better represented, because if 2/3 of us believe something, but our congressman doesn't vote that way, then we're not being fully represented.
Yeah.
There are other models that we should be considering, and we are not, because, hey, 250 years and this thing seems to work. It's not working as well as it used to.
Yeah, liquid democracy is really cool. It's exactly like Tim explained. It essentially unbundles preferences, so that you can have, instead of having to essentially select a candidate that hopefully has the exact preferences as you can essentially unbundle them and disperse across multiple different candidates. It actually goes really well with what I wanted to also ask you about, which is this idea of prediction markets and futurarchy, which is like a sort of an offshoot of that, where you use prediction markets for governance directly. I run a prediction market.
That was pretty cool, wasn't it? That was really cool. That, all of the newscasters really, they picked her as the winner, and but the bettors had a better understanding of it. They were voting with their money, or they were guessing with their money.
Yeah,
the wisdom of the crowd. They predicted Trump in a landslide, and that was really a very interesting thing, where the talking heads were stunned because they had their own sort of favoritism, and they were stunned by the outcome of the election. I think that's an interesting way to go. You put a certain amount of money behind some candidate, and then you say, okay, I'm going to bet on that. I'm taking this question in another direction for a second. And that is, 80 years ago, people were in a very difficult situation. People were out of work. The Industrial Revolution, all that automation, people went out of work. And from 29 to 34, there was the Great Depression, and people were having a hard time feeding themselves and all that stuff. So, and that's when they made the SEC, and that's when they made the rules around the 33 Act. And what that did was it said, the government's going to make sure that an investment is kosher before it it goes out to the public. And then they said, but if you're a millionaire or if you're highly sophisticated, you can go ahead and invest and lose your money if you want. What that did was, in a country that was making itself on the American dream and on from rags to riches and that whole thing, all of a sudden it limited the poorest people, and they can't get out of poverty because of that regulation, which was set up to protect them. It basically protected them into staying poor forever, because they can't invest, they can't participate in this world economy. And that's where all of a sudden these tokens came out, and they could participate, and they could buy Bitcoin. And, some of those people can't even be banked, because the banks say, look, I'm not taking any customer that doesn't have $1,000 or a couple $1,000. And so Bitcoin actually opened up the world. 2 billion people who are unbanked, all of a sudden 2 billion people are now a part of that global economy. And tokenization has opened up the ability for the impoverished people to also invest and make a future for themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled with it, but I'm also thinking that, does the SEC really need to exist? Yes, you need transparency. Yes, you need, you need honesty. But do you really need to keep everyone from themselves? Do you need to keep people from doing something that they know is good for them, but they're not allowed to?
Yeah, it's so many interesting points in that, Tim. The first is these accredited investor rules, where you basically have to be a millionaire in order to invest in private investment opportunities, unless it's a publicly traded equity. And the world is a lot different today than it was in 1934. In many respects, people are a bit dumber, but in other respects, they're probably a lot more savvy. And I'm not sure that having money is any guarantee of investment knowledge or decision making. And I'm not sure that it's the appropriate test anymore for this time, even if there should be a test. And I've always found it really odd that there are prohibitions against investing in private companies, but none against playing the lottery or taking on credit to buy TVs and we let people make financially destructive decisions all the time. But when it comes to something that could create wealth, to your point, we have these kinds of prohibitions in place. So I'm with you. I'm actually writing a piece right now. I'd love to your point of view just on the concept. So you were there for the present at the creation for the commercial web, and in the 90s they updated the Telecommunications Act of 1996, overhauled all the rules that were put in place in the 30s, and they made it. They basically, like, the government in this case showed a lot of foresight and courage, I think, in creating some rules that said, where possible, we should break down barriers. Where possible, we should, break up monopolies. Where possible, we should encourage commercialization. And then Article 230 of that piece of legislation basically made it so that, like, ISPs and platforms weren't liable for user-generated content. And that helped to really, unleash the potential. And I think of it today, we're in this moment where, we're facing down the financial equivalent of the web. Like, blockchains are the next era of the internet. They're an internet of assets and of value. And we have a set of rules that have been in place since the 30s, like with communications and broadcasting. And it's time, perhaps, maybe we don't throw it all away, but you can't realistically oversee the development of a digital financial system with laws that were written before the invention of the television, let alone the computer, the web, blockchains, and so forth. So I think
there's one other invention that has happened, that when we had the crash of the internet, when we had the .com bubble burst, I thought, oh boy, here in the Silicon Valley, we're going to go through a depression.
Hmm.
But we didn't, because all the people who lost their jobs, the women were in the workforce too. And so that ended up making it so it was not as tragic. And I think that makes a big difference, because your family is going to be okay. They're not going to make as much money. They'll drop in half, but they'll still be able to feed and clothe and shelter themselves in most cases. And you won't have that tragic, like the bread lines and the whole thing. If you got rid of the SEC. Yeah. So I think, you're onto something. Write it. It's important.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, because there's a specific fight that's going on right now where, like,
But by the way, that telecom thing,
yeah,
that was not a straight line.
yeah, no, of course
The
not.
telecom companies were fighting tooth and nail. They were saying no voice over IP. And fortunately, we were with Skype. Skype said, "Oh, we're not voice over IP." Turns out we're shared files. And so they were able to sort of dodge that, but Vonage just got crushed because of it. And so getting to that place is always going to be it's going to be a battle, because the status quo, I mean, there are a lot of people making a good living in the status quo, living under the monopolies. And they're very influential, and they lobby government, and they do all that stuff, and they're all a part of this thing. And when something new comes along, they panic, and they attack, and then they don't accept it for a long time. And now with Bitcoin, they're accepting it. AI, they're going to be freaking out when they start seeing certain things happening with AI. We use AI in about 15 different ways for our venture business.
Well, I'd love to understand a bit more, like your venture business today. There are all these new technologies that are getting a lot of attention and getting a lot of funding too. You talked at the beginning quite a lot about healthcare and breakthroughs in medicine and drug discovery. Just wondering, like, of all of these different things, what's exciting you the most? Where are you spending most of your time?
Well, I spend most of my time with entrepreneurs. So that, whether it's the entrepreneurs that come through our system, the entrepreneurs that we have a data lake of 250,000 companies that spits up 5 entrepreneurs a week. And
that's pretty cool.
Or the ones who come from Meet the Drapers, our show on TV or on YouTube. It's we see thousands of entrepreneurs for every 4 that go on that show. And so we're seeing a whole variety of entrepreneurs. So I spend a lot of my time just interviewing and meeting entrepreneurs, and that gives me a good sense for what might be going on out there in the world. So that's where I spend my time. And if you're thinking, well, what industry am I interested in, focused on, and all that, it's pretty interesting to me, because whenever I say we're going to go, the world is going in this direction, it might be, but some entrepreneur will come to me and it'll be the other category, something none of us have ever imagined. The guy who comes in and says, hey, we're going to bring back the woolly mammoth. Or Elon saying we're going to Mars, or what? I mean, those wild ideas capture the imaginations of some of the best scientists and engineers in the world, and they work on them. And while getting to Mars is going to be a challenge, on the way, we got Starlink. And SpaceX is doing a lot of cool stuff out there. And on the way to building the woolly mammoth, we're doing there's all sorts of drug discovery and cloning and stem cell work and all sorts of things that are happening because somebody's going after the woolly mammoth. There's something about having an ambition that's beyond most imaginations that attracts some of the best engineers and scientists in the world, and great things start to happen. And they aren't always exactly what you expected. I mean, when Kennedy said we're going to the moon, the technologies that occurred on the way to the moon were much more valuable than like the moon rock that we brought back. So that just going for something ends up being important. So when people say, well, what are you looking at? Well, yeah, I mean, we see AI transforming all the industries of the world. AI is being applied to robotics. They're going to be smart robots. That's going to be cool. Space and transportation are taking off, and we're going to be able to explore and go wherever. It's going to be amazing. Drug design is going to make us younger, maybe. I don't know. But it's certainly going to cure our ills better than the way it's happening today. And Bitcoin's going to make our currency much more liquid, and we are going to be able to globally grow much faster. I guess the only way I can really describe what happens to an economy when you have an anthropological leap forward, like from shells to gold, or gold, the promise of gold, or the promise of gold to the faith and credit of a government. Now, from the faith and credit of a government to Bitcoin, we get richer. And why is that? We get richer because deals can be made faster. Well, so people say, well, what's so special about that? If you and I make a deal, we're both better off. If we bring in Andrew, we do another deal, we're all better off. Everybody's better off. I don't know, in fantasy football, if I have four great running backs, but I need two wide receivers, and you got four great wide receivers, we make a trade, we're both better off, and we both play a better game. Same thing's true with trade. If I have a cow and you have a grove of oranges, we need some way to make that trade. I'm not going to give you one. I mean, one cow for one orange isn't a fair deal. One cow for 1,000 crates of oranges, maybe. So it's like you have to figure it out. And I don't want 1,000 crates of oranges, so I want credit with my cow. So what Bitcoin does is now make it even. Oh, also, as the world has improved and the economy has grown, trust has been more important. And now with Bitcoin and the blockchain, we have perfect trust on the blockchain. And that, or almost, I guess it's perfect trust. And you don't have that with the banks. You don't have that with the governments. You don't quite have it, but you have it now. Well, with perfect trust, there will be a premium for honesty. The world will grow much faster. Deals will get done much faster. Smart contracts are indisputable. They're written in software. It's done. You don't have to have fuzzy words here and there that can create misunderstandings and lawsuits and whatever else. So I think we will have more deals. We will have less friction to getting those deals done. And the world economy will grow much faster, and we will pull even more people out of poverty.
Well, that's a pretty hopeful message to end on, Tim. Thank you so much for giving us all your valuable insights, for all the stuff that you're doing. How's Adam doing? Is he still?
Adam's awesome.
He's killing it. You're killing
it. Jesse's awesome. Billy's awesome. Our artist daughter is also awesome.
That's wonderful.
But we have three venture capitalists. Billy runs Path, Adam runs Boost, and Jesse runs Hologen. and they're all so good at it.
Well,
They got
they
it from their mother.
I'm sure they inherited a lot from their mom and maybe learned a little bit at the feet of the master. And I'm sure they learned a lot of it out there on their own, right? I think you know that my dad and I together wrote Blockchain Revolution back in 2016. So I know what it's like to collaborate, and to be in the same kind of orbit, and then to go do other things and to return back and to find ways of collaborating. There's nothing better, I think, than being able to work with your family. And I know Boost and these other things are different, but to be able to kind of share notes and talk about this stuff, I'm certainly very grateful for that relationship I have with my dad, and I know that's a big part of your family too. So,
yeah, we love it. We love the deals. We love the ongoing communications about what's going on in our industry and that kind of thing. It's just fabulous.
Awesome.
And we get along well. My son Billy worked with me for 4 years, and he was the best associate I ever had by miles. And then he went off to do his own thing. So that was a little bit of a blow, but it was also kind of fun because now he's got his own thing, and we share ideas.
Yeah, you can co-invest.
Adam
Co-invest with your
works right next to me. We're Boost and Draper Associates are almost kind of one thing.
Yeah.
And Jesse and I went to Alabama together. She's going to transform Alabama the way she has the LA area with getting more entrepreneurs, more female entrepreneurs going. And so Halogen's doing great things too. So yeah, pretty nice to be able to have all that happening in my world.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the next time we do this, we can do it with the whole family, and we'll do a round table.
It's hard to round up the cats.
And I got to come up with a really good idea so I can get on your reality show and pitch some new company concepts to
absolutely
to the group.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Shows a kick in the pants, and it's growing like crazy. 300 million. It reaches 300 million people.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's over the top TV for you, right? I mean, you build an
and we went away from Hollywood for it.
Yeah,
we did YouTube and then the local networks in India, Brazil, Taiwan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Tim, for joining us. Thank you, Andrew, for the great questions and discussion. That's it for this week's episode of DeFi Decoded. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please make sure to like and share and subscribe and comment on the show. It helps us, helps to keep us going and helps others to find the program. That's it. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.